Capitalism is a prison. Don't blame me, blame René Clair's 1931 film Nous, Liberté, or Freedom Forever, which opens with two best buds, Louis, and Emile, planning their escape from prison. Things don't go exactly as planned as they're scaling the outer walls, and only one of them, Louis, makes it out of the prison. Emile sacrificing his freedom so his friend can get away, which leads to my favorite bit in the film, where he steals a bike as his getaway and ends up winning a bike race. Louis, now a free man, steals some new clothes in the most ingenious theft I've ever seen in film. He asks for something in back, steals the money, and then pretends someone attacked him and stole the money themselves. It's amazing this man was ever put in jail. He's a criminal mastermind. He starts selling records on the street, and we see him slowly work himself up to becoming a titan of industry as a record player magnate. At this time, we pick back up with Emile, who has been released from prison and is luxuriating in a field when he's arrested again for vagrancy. This guy can't catch a break. While in prison, he sees a beautiful young woman, and after a very dark but very funny bit, he escapes and attempts to meet the woman, only to be chased by her uncle straight into a job at Louis's new factory. After causing some chaos in the assembly line, Louis and Emile are finally reunited, but Louis isn't thrilled to see his old friend, afraid he might lose everything if it's found out that he escaped from prison. Louis tries to bribe his old friend into, getting lost, but Emile only has eyes for Jean and wants to stay and woo her. Jean, by the way, already has a boyfriend who she sneaks off with from time to time. Eventually, Louis comes around and the two begin to rekindle their old friendship, but are soon spotted by a former fellow inmate who will go on to try and blackmail Louis. The two men essentially try to buy Jean for Emile, but Emile realizes that Jean is in love with someone else. Louis opens up a fully automated factory and gives all of his wealth to his employees. Emile's found out, the factory does the work, the employees go fishing, and Louis and Emile walk off together broke but happy. Like I said at the top of this video, capitalism is a prison, and the film screams this as loudly as it can. The metaphor is blunt and obvious, but the entire film has this big, silly, lighthearted tone, and so for me, I find it more fun than eye-rolly. We open on what we assume is an assembly line at a factory making toys, only to pull back and see the inmates at work singing a song about how freedom isn't for them. Later in the film, we're introduced to Louis's factory that seems even worse than the prison, with sparse industrial design, workers being lorded over by guards in white armbands, frisking them on their way out to make sure they didn't take anything, and ensuring that they're working at maximum efficiency. If you just replace the guards with robots, this is how I imagine an Amazon warehouse operates. At the same time, we see the indoctrination of children in schools telling them that work is freedom.
Travail, c'est la liberté.
It's the first Gary Vee video.
Execute for 18 months.
Then, juxtaposed against all that, we get Emile representing freedom, lounging in a big lush field, open air and surrounded by the natural world. It's when we take him and inject him into the factory that we get all of this chaos, because freedom cannot be contained. In an essay about the film, Michael Atkinson says it better than I ever could. Whereas both the supposedly antithetical ideologies of capitalism and socialism agree that work is indeed liberty, Claire argues that freedom is freedom, for the individual to define individually. Despite the memorable late sequence wherein a crowd of top-hatted corporate vultures scramble through a courtyard after wind-blown money, Claire's target isn't the nouveau riche, but the very notion of social control. Still, Nous, Liberté isn't a critical film, it's a celebration, a living life as a song proof of the alternatives. Better to own nothing in a field of singing flowers than to sell your life for the right to live. I haven't really mentioned yet that this film is also a musical that really has no structure, it just sings when the mood strikes, but there's nothing overly memorable about the songs, and it is funny. It never reaches the heights of my favorite comedies of the era, but there are some laughs to be had. More than funny though, I think the film is important because it is relevant. Scarily, depressingly relevant to modern audiences. Was it the great philosopher Bon Jovi that once said, "The more things change, the more they stay the same." We even get hints at our upcoming AI apocalypse when Louis automates his factory, although I'm not sure me and you are headed towards a future where we all just fish and dance while machines do all the work. I guess we'll just have to wait and see. And in the meantime, you can check out some of the other films I talked about from 1931. You can see how I rank the films of 1930, and you can go watch something old other than me. And don't forget, eat the rich. Hum, yum, 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 yum. The rich. Yummy.